will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
All right, hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cantina Club, where we're going to continue our recaps of Andor season 2. This episode is going to cover episodes 4, 5, and 6, and we've really been enjoying so far them releasing these in 3 episode chunks. I think it was a really smart move on the filmmaker's part. So let's jump right into it. I'm assuming Gundark wants to start since I know she's hating on the show so much. She wants to get her jabs in before we fall all over it. Oh, and I always forget to do this. By the way, I'm Carillion Traitor. That is Greedo, our resident Rhodian, and we have Professor Gundark down there, uh, and she is going to start us off with this episode.
Okay, I guess I'm going to talk about a little bit about all three together, because some of the things I want to say come from all three of the episodes.
That's appropriate because they're like a movie. All
yeah,
three go
it
together, I
is.
feel like,
Yeah, it's like a movie.
in each part.
I loved all the storylines about the spying. I began feeling with this story arc that this was an excellent espionage show. I never felt that really about the first season, but this feels like it's so focused on the spies working together and the tension between them and all kinds of things going on in the background, maneuvering their missions, that I thought this one was just, it was a really good thriller. And let's see, at the beginning of episode 4, you've got Cyril now on Gorman, and we find out that he's doing spy work for the ISB, he thinks he's trying to find outside agitators
Right.
that are trying to start a rebellion on Gorman, but they're really using him as a plant to try to start a rebellion on Gorman. The Empire wants to start a rebellion on Gorman. I think what's really interesting too about this story arc for the rebellion on Gorman is that the rebel spies, at least those under Luthen, and then the ISB are really going for the same goal. You come to find out that Luthen also wants a revolution on Gorman, and he doesn't really care what the consequences will be for the Gorman people because he's thinking about the big picture.
Right.
He tells Cassian when he sends him to Gorman to look at the resistance there. He tells him, well, we need a planet of wealth and status, to join the rebellion. That'll do it. And Cassian's like, I don't want any part of this. These people are not ready, because he goes there and stakes it out. And he says, they're not ready at all. You can count me out of this. They will burn. Gorman will burn to the ground. And he said, well, they will burn very brightly. And it's a horrifying moment where you see the Imperials and Luthen's spies are kind of working for the same thing, but with different ultimate outcomes.
Different ultimate goals.
Yeah. I'll go later when y'all talk more about Cassian's storyline on Gorman. I really want to talk about that. But the next thing I want to say is that I think that for me, though, despite loving the espionage stuff, the most valuable player in this story arc was Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
I mean, in Rogue One, we've always been laughing about him and everything because it seemed like he came from a different film, He was so loony. In this, I feel like looking at his change from the first season, he was more of a standard kind of borderline terrorist spy, in the first season. And now he is huffing the nuclear waste or whatever the hell that was.
Right. That was crazy.
He drank the Kool-Aid. He's just hugging the Kool-Aid. And he is terrifying. The poor little boy, Wilman, who's been working with Luthen and Cassian, shows up on his doorstep to deliver, I guess it was that machine that they stole from the Wheat Planet in the first story arc.
Right.
And that makes, what is it? It's a fuel source. Right, Rhodian,
Rhodian.
Rhydonium, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be incredibly dangerous to breathe, and Saw is just breathing it in. And he has that wonderful long monologue where he talks about, don't you feel it? Don't you feel her? She's ready to explode. Revolution isn't for the sane. And I'm like, holy cow. And he talks that boy into removing his mask and puffing the
And
crap.
endangering his own life. Yeah.
Okay, now let me propose this. This is probably totally wrong, but when we see him in Rogue One, he is horribly maimed, and he is using some kind of mask and huffing.
Right.
More
Okay,
regularly
now
using a breathing mask.
I
Yeah.
always thought he was huffing oxygen, and now I'm aware.
That's Rhydonium, yeah.
Yeah, maybe he's
Yeah.
huffing Rhydonium.
He may have a supply of that in there that so if somebody gets close enough to shoot him, he goes up in a huge
Yeah.
fireball. They go with him too, also. You know? But also his voice is weaker
Mhm.
in Rogue One, and they said
Yeah.
that Rhydonium erodes your vocal cords and burns you up from the inside out. That's why he says when he says there's not much of me left, it's for
Yep.
multiple reasons. Yeah.
Golly, but I now see where he came from. And when the boy confronted him, I felt just terrified for the boy. I thought the boy was probably going to die. So I was surprised he made it out of there, but who knows what damage to his lungs and his brain. But I loved that part of the story arc.
That was really intense. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I'll turn it over to you guys. You want to talk about other things?
While we're on Saw, there is something I want to say about that. I think I texted you guys after I watched these episodes, and I said, "This show is just making me sad." It's like this show is the from these 3 episodes, the feeling I got carried away from it was just sadness for these characters because it's like we're watching a foregone conclusion. It's like watching the people purchase tickets for the Titanic, and they're like, well, should I go to the ball or should I go on the Titanic? I'll go on the Titanic. And you're like, no,
No, don't.
Only it's almost worse than that because Saul, why he moved me so much at the end of this is because he's insane and he admits he's insane, but there's just a desperate sadness behind his joy there. The actor played it so well, to where I don't think of Saw as necessarily a joke anymore. He's very memeable, and I really loved his character. I never thought of him as a total joke, but sorry, Saw. But seeing kind of his, if you take in the Clone Wars and Rebels and every appearance he's had, the line that got me, that just struck me, like I was like devastated by, was when he said, "This is my sister." And you realize that this kid he's talking to has no idea that Saw actually had a real sister, that they were partners, that she was the one that carried the moral integrity and everything, and the fight and the intelligence and the restraint and all the things that he could have used at this point, that once she was killed tragically because of his own actions, really, there's nothing left to hold him back from going down this road that he's been on and that he's never going to get off of. And that really hit me. It's like, that was cold-blooded, man. That line was cold-blooded to throw in there, because either he said that with intentionality or he's so far gone that he doesn't know what he's saying.
Yeah.
And either way is pretty horrifying from the way that and this kid follows his lead because he wants to feel in the moment that this is all worth it, that maybe this is the way to go. Yeah. This is power. They're powerless. All these people are powerless, and he's saying, you're powerless, embrace it, set yourself on fire, and use yourself as fuel until you get done what you need to get done. And also feel something, feel so good. Just go crazy. Why not? We're all dead men. And, but this kid doesn't hear what we're hearing. He doesn't hear the significance of those lines and understand, I need to get him back away from this dude. I think he understands it, but he also knows the position he's in. It's like, there was 2 of us working on the same project. Saul murdered the other one. I'm the one standing. I'm the chosen one. And this is it. It's like, go forward or don't, and it's kind of the same choice Cassian made when he went to Luthen and said, hey, kill me to keep your secrets or let me into the secrets.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's making choices as these episodes go along. I just felt really incredibly sad for Saw and for that Willman, was it? Mm-hmm. And the other part that made me really, really sad was the whole force healer sequence.
Oh yeah.
With Bix and Cassian, and Bix and Cassian's whole relationship is just there are hero and heroine, I guess, and they're in different places, but both of them are kind of overwhelmed, and Bix is trying to come to peace with it because she can't do anything else. I think that's another theme of these episodes, is people dealing with things, and people dealing with the consequences of their actions and their choices. And I absolutely loved the way they portrayed people of faith in the Star Wars universe. A little bit of it, wasn't much, but I thought that this could have been a disaster, and it really wasn't. I thought it was moving, and the woman who played the Force healer was perfectly cast. And that's another thing about all these episodes. Every time they bring a new character on, or every time you see another person brought back, you're like, this must be what happens when you cast with intentionality, like real super laser focused intentionality, not to create superstars. Like saying the original Star Wars method of, we're going to take people who are not known for anything else and try to bank on them, and which they tried to do in the sequels. No offense to anybody, and I'm not saying that, but when you take people who are just perfectly cast, and you only have moments to know them, and everything about that actor and their performance, you put the intentionality in their wardrobe and everything, the lighting. You instantly know a lot about these characters, and I thought that character was very compelling. I wanted to know more about her, and which I just similar for all of these characters in all these episodes. But I thought that it was bold of them to, in this universe they've established of the side of Star Wars that's just very gritty, real, and agnostic, I would almost say. It's full of agnostic people, to show Yavin 4 as a place where, if you still believe in the Force and you believe it can do things, you're in danger. Yeah. You're under persecution. They're not focusing on that. They're not talking about religious freedoms in this show. They're talking about personal freedoms and stuff. But they do. There are religious freedoms in here as well. But you realize this woman's she looked so tired, that she looked so strung out. It's like she's probably been fleeing for her life and hiding for her life and people keep coming to her probably and exposing her, saying, I heard you're a Force healer. I heard you. No, please stop. They're going to kill me. They're going to literally kill me if you keep coming. But she can't help trying to help people. I got all this just from her few seconds, And the fact that she's in this kind of refuse heap of Yavin that's pulling in everybody by word of mouth, but the Empire's too blind to even know it's there. But the people in need, that they still know how to read people and trust people, are able to bring people there. All that was really cool, and Cassian's and Bix's various reactions rang so true to me of humanity, and also was just sad because Bix is trying to believe in something bigger than themselves, and Cassian is just saying, no, I'm tired of something bigger than myself. I want to be in charge of my own fate. I don't want to hear anything from a mystic about what's going to happen to me. I want to determine what's going to happen to me. And Bix is like, but there's meaning in this. There's meaning, and meaning is what we need. And he's like, I don't even want to contemplate the meaning. I've seen too much, and that was just, for me, such a powerful and sad scene. These characters, there are heroes, and they are heroic in their own ways, but they're also very sad, and I came away from those episodes just feeling kind of crushed, because we know a lot about what's going to happen to some of these, and we assume most of them aren't going to make it, But anyway.
Can I say something about the Force healer? The line that really got me from the Force healer was when she was talking to Bix, after Cassian backed away, and she said, I feel like he has someplace he needs to be. And then they were talking about their Bix and Cassian's relationship, and she said, maybe you're the place he needs to be, and that's not it, and it just breaks your heart. It leads to the final decision that will come later in the series, where she's got to let him go to the rebellion. And that line kind of set up for me what seems to happen with him for the rest of what we've seen of this series so far, is that we're seeing him move closer and closer towards that place he needs to be, that he doesn't really want to be. Just like you were saying, he'd rather have his little home and he'd rather be in Ewok Village or whatever that Tarzan's treehouse they were living in, and not be involved in all of this. But Bix knows
Tarzan's treehouse.
Yeah, it did look like Tarzan's treehouse.
K2SO is boy.
But Bix knows that he has that ability, and you see the ability as you go into the next story arc beyond that one, growing, where he just has a connection where everything he does is somehow right, in what he's doing with the espionage work, how he helps people. And he's just right for that. So,
and you can believe it's luck, like he says at one point in later episodes, or you can believe it's the Force. And Obi-Wan says there's no such thing as luck, and we know the Force is real from the rest of the movies and everything. I thought it was a subtle, meaningful, heartfelt tip of the cap, because they could have easily just discarded the Force or treated it as we're better than mystic. Mythical stuff. We're down in the trenches. This is the dirty part of Star Wars. For them to include it was spoke to me as a original fan who loves the Force and loves the concept of the mysticism and everything. You don't need Jedi flashing laser swords all the time. You need to see how real people relate to it, or how they feel about it. And but it was when she said. You just knew when she said, maybe he's supposed to be, maybe his purpose is to be with you. And like you said, that's not it. And not only that, but the irony of his destiny is going to lead him to another woman, literally.
Yeah.
In the form of Jyn Erso, who represents the other side of the rebellion, the active, whatever they're going to do together, and who happens to, her father is the designer of the Death Star, the very thing that he was putting together in his prison, sentence and all that. Yeah, it's all incredible.
When I think about them hugging each other at the end of Rogue One as they died, and that just is kind of the culmination of what he was. He wanted to be with Bix, but he is where he has to be, and when he's where he has to be, he helps. He connects to the people. Like it even seems to go back to the first episode of this whole season, where he connected to that little nobody, that little girl working in the Imperial base when he was trying to steal that ship, and he told her, look at me, and he kept her grounded. He's that kind of person that he connects and keeps grounded the people that are immediately around him, even if he's never met them before. So I just thought that was a cool
it's the strength. It's the strength that he gathers from everything around him that comes out when the chips are down. I think the irony too of one of my favorite lines in Rogue One, or one of my favorite sequence of lines, is at the end on the tower when Jyn asks him, "Do you think anybody's heard us, or do you think anybody's listening?" And he said, "Someone's listening, or someone heard," or something like that. If you think about what that implies about him at that point, that he has turned into that person of faith, that he believes that it was worth it, and also the stuff that has gotten him to the point of desperation in this episode, where he's scared to look at himself and scared to really, continue onward. Jyn kind of represents that person that come along and say, "I'm going to give you something to go out on where it's worth fighting for. There's no more gray. The Death Star is evil. Here's our chance to stop it, and we do it straight on, and sacrifice everything." And that's what recruited all those men in Rogue One. Was they felt like, here's a chance for a stand-up fight that we've been wishing for this whole time, but we were too powerless to do. And they finally have that power to say to themselves, we're going to defy our own authority, and we're going to do what we feel is right. And how many times had they done what felt wrong because they were ordered to do it, because it ended up being the right thing to do, but it felt wrong. So that whole arc is just, I'm sure we'll talk about it after the show is over and everything, but because I was a little disappointed in Cassian when he didn't want to talk to the healer and all that, because I wanted to hear more.
Yeah, me too.
And I also thought, he's still trying to run. But it's necessary. It's necessary for his arc to be continual and to be convincing and to end up. The crescendo is not right now. The crescendo is Rogue One. So that's what we have to bear in mind. Is he's still not fully quite developed. you can see the uncertainty in the character at the beginning of Rogue One when he executes his comrade, and just the
Mm-hmm.
look on his face, that he's not finished. He's not a finished project yet until the end. So anyway, well, I was a little disappointed in them. I thought, yeah, they can't make him. They
Yeah.
can't end him. They can't end him as a person here, because that's not his story. His story
Right.
continues all the way
Exactly.
to the end of the movie. So
Yeah, that's
So
a great point.
Carillion, what'd you think about
Um,
this story arc?
well, I mean, I'm first and foremost, I'm loving the show so far. I really am. I think it's been fantastic. Hold on. Just type something. Okay. So yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. And one point that we haven't really mentioned is the fact that basically what the filmmakers told us was true. We are basically advancing towards Rogue One in 1 year chunks. Because at the beginning of every 3 episodes, it says 1 year later, 1 year later, 1 year later, etc. So I think that's a good point, and I know Greedo brought up a good point as well. Like when you're seeing a show that you already know the ultimate outcome as far as the big picture outcome,
mhm,
it puts you in a different place when you're watching it, because you already know how it's going to end.
mhm.
So you're not really hanging on every word like, oh, what's going to happen? How's this going to turn out? Because you know how it's going to turn out. The To me, that takes even more skill from the filmmakers to be able to craft an interesting story to keep you, watching. And I think that they're doing that. There have been moments. I know we mentioned it in the first 3 episode arc during the party and the tension around Mon Mothma and all
Mm-hmm.
that. I just felt every bit of that. I was just like, oh my gosh, like how in the world is she going to get out of this? And I felt that as well with other moments so far throughout the show where I'm literally edge of my seat, on some things. So overall, I think that the feeling of the show is a success. I think that working from a place where you really don't have that sort of aha card at the end to play because everybody knows the ending. It's Rogue One. We've all seen it 10 years ago. We know how all this ends. And I think that they've balanced everything well with nostalgia. They haven't gone over the top, with it, I don't think. I think they've given us enough to make us feel like we're in the Star Wars universe. And they've also given us a unique enough story to where it keeps our interest, as opposed to us just thinking, well, we've just seen all this before.
Right.
There's
Mhm.
nothing new here. So I feel like they've done a great job so far, and I'm riveted. I've been on literally on the edge of my seat for practically every episode at some point. So I've been invested in the characters, both Imperial and Rebels. Seeing more of Saw, I think, has been fantastic. I just find it interesting that Cassian, to me, and I know we've talked about this before, the Cassian character to me just doesn't feel like the main character.
Yeah,
He
Mhm.
there's
it,
so
it
many other
feels more like
wonderful
an ensemble
characters.
show.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost
It
like
It is.
does.
all these people are the main characters, and Cassian's just one of them.
Yeah.
Uh, for right or wrong. But I do think that, Greedo, I agree with Greedo as well on it is depressing, and I felt sad, for a lot of it because it's a very depressing time in the Star Wars universe, in the
But it,
whole
but
story. It's
you know what you're saying, isn't
Mhm.
he? Isn't that kind of the point of the whole
Yeah.
show that now I'm figuring out
Hmm.
is that he's the supporting player, to everybody else.
Hmm.
And so we were complaining about him not having enough being the center of the show and having enough developed
Right.
personality in the last season, but it's more like
He's
he's just
becoming
an
symbolic of that
example.
type of
Yes,
person. Yeah.
yes,
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
He's
there's
becoming the
faceless
poster child for that
hordes.
person. Yep.
They end up on a wall somewhere at best.
Yeah. Yep.
Their names on a wall or a memorial. The
Hmm.
ones that did the really secret work that no one wants to talk about, no one even knows they
You
existed.
never even know they
Which they
existed. Yep.
Mhm.
which they start to imply this here
Hmm.
is and Luthen believes that is prepared for that as well. So yeah,
And that's exactly what it is.
I think he is symbolic of
Yeah,
yeah. And
absolutely.
also, he assumes different identities, so you could almost say, was it him on this planet, or was
Hmm.
it a
Yeah.
totally different guy with a
A
Yeah.
different,
totally different person.
because
Yeah.
he's an actor, he assumes different, he's a chameleon.
Oh, can
Hmm.
I say that? I want to
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
something about that. This is what I wanted to say about his espionage story. I loved it when he played the designer, the fashion
Yeah, that
designer.
was great.
Yes, that was
And,
great.
and I really felt that he was now Luthen's protege. He learned kind of that, it
Hmm.
seemed, from Luthen, because Luthen plays that kind of character on Coruscant.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he
so it was
does. Yeah.
almost like I could see him he was becoming Luthen, and then by the end of the episode, he said, "No, I don't want anything more to do with this."
Right.
When he said he wanted to burn Gorman down, it's like no, and you could see. I guess it was at the end of that story arc, all of these other characters turning against Luthen's way. Like Vel, whenever her lover was killed, that wonderful final episode where you had the cross cutting between the heist where they were trying to steal the Imperial weapons and the scene on Coruscant at the party where Luthen was trying to get the listening device out of that museum room. Vel just at the end, you can see she's lost everything when she loses her partner, and she had asked Luthen specifically to bring her partner back to her on this mission, and now she's lost her. And we find out later, that she's left Luthen entirely. And so it's like Luthen seems to be burning bridges with people where he goes too far in demanding too much of them personally, not caring about the loss of personal life, to the point that it violates something within each of those individuals, and they end up all on Yavin and not with Luthen. You know,
makes you wonder if Luthen might end up being the enemy of the last arc.
That's what I'm wondering.
Because how long is he going to sit on his hands with people leaving him knowing too much? One of the number one rules of espionage is you don't trust people once they're out of your control, and once you no longer have leverage over them. With Bix gone, what leverage does Luthen have on Cassian?
And boy, in this story arc, he lost it too. When he found out that listening device was at that place, he didn't know what to do. It was his protege who kept him grounded and got him through that. Clea. So he's starting to crack. And I have a bad feeling he might be killed by one of his own or something in the final story arc, but we'll just have to see. He's gone too far, and I think he's beginning to know it.
Yeah.
But
the other ironic thing would be is if he actually survives all this.
Yeah.
That would be
the other thing,
he's left to pick up the pieces after the Galactic Civil War, and no one, for whatever reason, no one can acknowledge him because it dirties them. Like Mon Mothma is probably going to become a famous Republic politician. She can't acknowledge that she was
in league with him.
She was in league with assassins and spies. So he may become an outcast and read a really awful fate that's way worse than losing his life, like he's been prepared to do. I think Luthen is in a way a force for evil because ultimately his goals are good and the results can be good, but it's one man deciding to use very nefarious methods, and that's what burns people out. Is that people want a stand-up fight. They're like, if we're going to be in a galactic war, let's just make it a war like we remember. Let's fight each other honestly. Let's stop doing all this underhanded shit. And I think his purposes ultimately turn back and serve themselves a lot of times, more so than because he has to constantly be concerned about his own purposes, not just the ultimate goal. He justifies it by saying, I'm prepared to lay down everything and I've sacrificed everything, but that's not really a justification. It can be from a certain point of view, but a certain point of view. But I don't know what else I was going to say. So
when he asks you to sacrifice your own baby, and your wife, and
I will say, the one good thing about Luthen that surprised me in this episode, especially, is I feel like he did check on Bix a lot out of concern. Cassian thought it was a slap in the face that he was coming after her.
He's overprotective.
I
did think he was genuine.
He doesn't see the strength that Bix has, really, and Luthen does, or Luthen wants to bring it out to help her survive, and also to help everybody survive and make her more useful, make Cassian more useful. But I do think he also, when you find out that these women have been separated, well, he didn't kill either one of them. Because like I said, when someone's done or defies you too much, a lot of times you just send them on a suicide mission or whatever. That's what you'd expect him to do. But and several times in these episodes, I get the feeling he's trying to do his best for his agents and stuff. He's talking a very tough game, so they're prepared, and he's not scared to send them to their deaths at all. but he's actually trying to give them the resources and everything to bounce back and survive because there's so much work ahead of them that he thinks of them as valuable resources, probably. But sometimes that's what's so great about is Stellan Skarsgård, is that his name?
Yeah.
Is his performance is so nuanced, and probably he doesn't even know what's real and what isn't a lot of times with his reactions because he has to act so much. Not the actor, but the character.
Yeah.
But you can see he stops short of making him a cold-blooded monster. And really puts a lot of concern on his face and his eyes. It doesn't feel fake to me. It's like it makes him a very nuanced, a super compelling character and a leader that people will lay down their lives for because they believe him, you know. And also, he's brutally honest. Which would run most people off, but he tends to get the leverage on you and then get brutally honest and say, like, you can leave. It ain't going to end well for you. But real quick, since we're limited on time, let's talk about the Gorman real quick and the gore. What a brilliant triumph this planet is.
Yeah, I love that world. I mean, it's obviously, you know, it's a riff on Paris and France and all that, but it was so cool.
The Parisian resistance and all the French resistance, World War II. Yeah.
And you're right. The aesthetic goes right to Rogue One. It really does. It bridges perfectly the gritty setting we're in of, you know, we may have automatic weapons or we may have to bolt action. This thing, you know, it's like there's like a bunch of different technologies from older times, newer technologies, and but yeah, I love these people are such perfect victims for the Empire because they are just important enough to the galaxy to think they wouldn't be the first to be touched. You know, they not untouchable, but they wouldn't be the first.
Yeah, and
they have these traditions. They're pacifists. Pretty much. They're very close to Alderaan in that regard, I feel like. They have established exports that the galaxy wants and needs. So it's like, why is there any hostility towards us that we don't understand? But they don't know the full story, which is my favorite phrase ever now in Star Wars is the foliated, what was it? Substrate?
Calcite or whatever.
Yeah, the foliated substrate calcite. That was another word. I can't remember what it was. It reminded me of the plankton, sea greens, proteins from the sea. From Logan's Run. Every episode begins, it seems like, with the flashback of the guy going, foliated calcite. Great foliated calcite. In case you need a reminder of what this is all about. It's like I'm looking at my shampoo bottle. Oh shit! We got substrate foliated. No, it's exfoliated. It's fine.
Exfoliated.
It's not the foliated. It's not substrate. It's straight. It's above ground.
All right, so let's wrap up these 3 episodes with our ratings for the group of those 3 episodes. Who wants to go first?
I'm gonna go first, and I'm gonna give it a 9 because it felt the equivalent of the first story arc to me. Just excellent all throughout.
Yeah,
I give it a 9 as well.
Me as well. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so
if this was Dancing with the Stars, it would have a good chance to advance.
Right.
Vote, people, vote.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, there you have it. That's episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor season 2. Our wrap up, and we will be back shortly. Wink, wink, with our wrap up of episodes 7, 8, and 9. So we will see you then. Thanks as always for liking, subscribing, supporting the channel, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you.
Wait a minute.
Calcite.
Very weak coming through.
Exfoliated calcite.
Yeah, substrate foliated. It was I've never heard of it. Such a bunch of bullshit. Dare you? Chancellor Palpatine never went on and on about anything except good. That's the only thing he ever went on about. Everything else was...
Have you ever heard the story of Darth Plagueis?
It's good.
But that was the linchpin of the whole thing. The story of Darth Plagueis saved the whole prequels. That meme became so powerful that it was the most powerful force in the internet, and that's what saved the prequels. Now try to meme the sequels and see what happens to you. They've already tried. It's just dumb. There's nothing to farm there.